The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to this special MentorSmart edition of the Perfect Pitch. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Linda Plano and I have the best job in the world. I get to work with smart, creative, and passionate people just like you and help you make your dreams come true. In fact, I've worked with nearly 600 entrepreneurs at this point, and they've gone on to raise well over $250 million. So today we're going to go step by step through my tried and true process for translating your value proposition into a compelling investor pitch, or really any kind of pitch that you like. And if you apply this with integrity and robustly, then you will wind up with the best pitch for your company that you've ever had, and that is a promise. So for those of you who may be new to GoToWebinar, just so you know, there is a red and white arrow in the top right corner of your screen, and that will allow you to open and close your tool panel. If you want to talk or at the end of the presentation, if you want to pitch, then make sure that you've got your audio set up. You can either use your computer's mic and speakers, or if you want to use a telephone, no worries, just go to the audio setup. That'll give you the phone number, access code, and the PIN, so I know what your name is when you want to ask questions. Also, if you want to submit questions by text anytime, I will try to keep my eye on this particular window on the toolbar. Just type in any questions and I'll be happy to try to answer them as we're going, or certainly at the end. Two things I want to do is to check and make sure that you can hear me, but also that I am not too loud. So first, can you please raise your hand if you can hear me? Okay, that's not a good sign. All right, I am going to unmute one of the people who isn't speaking right now. Scott, can you hear me?
I hear you fine, Linda.
Thanks. Oh, okay, great. And not too loud?
No.
Sorry, I'm too loud. I've got such a bad cold. I hope I don't break your eardrums. Okay, let's rock and roll. Okay, so just quickly about me, I've got a very technical background with degrees in physics and material science and engineering. I have been an entrepreneur ever since high school. Whenever I've been involved in any project, company, organization, whatever, I've always looked around for how can I add value to this organization and be passionate about it, so that I am really going to get the resources we need to make it happen, have goals and all of that kind of thing. So whether you're in a big company or a startup, you can always be an entrepreneur. Excuse me. I'm also an experienced manager. I've been everything from a research scientist to a CEO of startup companies and up to vice president for new business development in more established companies. But mostly what I have discovered is that I just love coaching entrepreneurs. I've been doing that since 2005, and bringing together people with business people, business leaders, sometimes investors, and so on. That's my Yenta matchmaker kind of a role. And that's why I'm involved in the MIT Enterprise Forum, helped to start the Ignite Clean Energy Business Competition, now the Clean Tech Open Northeast, and why I am involved in the MentorSmart program. I just think that it's like I said, it's the best job in the world. What can I say? But enough about me. We're going to start off with my philosophy on how to get perfect pitch. And the first question is, so why do we bother pitching, right? Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's something that is essential for entrepreneurs, and in my opinion, anybody who wants to do anything that's a little bit outside of expectations. And the answer is sort of like the answer to real estate. Top 3 things in real estate are location, location, location. For pitching, it's get the next meeting, and get the next freaking meeting, right? So it's, I just realized I've been showing you the wrong screen. Apologies, I've been coaching all day today. So hopefully that makes more sense. Okay. Get the next meeting, get the next meeting, and get the next meeting. It's the only thing that we're really trying to accomplish. This is not about teaching. It's not about getting a check signed or anything else like that. Okay. So how do we go about achieving that, getting that next meeting? And the only way I really know to do that is to know your audience. And the way I like to think about this is that investors are basically very simple creatures. They make up their minds based on just two things: fear and greed. And if I'm going to be fair, we all make up our minds this way. It's just a matter of what we're fearful of and greedy for. And for those of you out there who are altruistic, let me just emphasize that fear and greed do not need to be about money. They can be about your greed for doing social bringing social benefits to your community or to a developing country or something like that. And your fear can be about not having the opportunity for artistic freedom, or it doesn't matter. What matters is understanding what is important to your audience. So what this means is that I want you not to teach, right? It's a natural tendency for those of us who are technical especially, but any entrepreneur, you're so close to the details, you understand that knowing each nuance and the underlying technology is really critical to understanding the company fully. Well, that is not the job of a pitch. The job of a pitch is just to engage the audience. And I don't mean by that it's okay to just do some slick sales pitch that's got nothing to do with reality and your business. It's about taking those complex ideas and relating them quickly and simply so that your audience can ask questions that are relevant to them with respect to your value proposition. And this means I want you to make sure they leave your pitch wanting to know more stuff. Because if they think they know everything already, why are they going to bother having a follow-up meeting with you? And that's what I want, right? People invest in people more than in technology, and they only invest in you if they trust in you, at least in some aspect of you, that your technology is amazing. But generally speaking, whether they trust in your integrity and your ability to execute. So you've got to get those additional meetings and leave stuff to the imagination. So if you wind up forgetting something in the middle of your pitch, don't beat yourself up too much. It's okay. They will ask questions if they're interested. You can always bring it back up. And the nice thing about most pitches is that they are much more conversational, and you'll have that opportunity. So mostly focus on telling your story your way in the way that's most compelling for your audience. And I know that sounds a little contradictory, but we'll talk about that. What I want you to do then is to tune your words for the ears of your audience. That's why I call it perfect pitch. You know, it's basically human nature to want to talk about what we care about the most, but it's also human nature to want to hear about the things that interest us the most. And since the audience has something that you want, whether it's referrals or money or whatever, they win, okay? So it's about them and not about you. If that's the only thing you take away from this and the idea that what I want you to do, since you don't have time to teach them, all you can do is get them so excited about what you're doing. I want everything you say to either reduce fear or increase greed, or preferably both, or it doesn't belong in this initial pitch. Excuse me. Okay. Another tip that I want you to take advantage of every time you pitch from now on is to use these three parts. First of all, introduce yourself. Even if somebody has just introduced you and you're on stage at a competition, always introduce yourself, because a pitch is more a conversation than a presentation. This is the start of your relationship with the people in the audience, whether there's one person at a cocktail party or 1,000 people at some pitching event. So think of it that way, that this is your starting to relate to individuals in the audience. It's another reason you really need to make eye contact and so on. At the end of the pitch, make an ask. I can't tell you how many people I hear make pitches and then they end and they don't ask for what they need. There's no point to pitch unless there is something that you want people to do that they weren't already planning to do. You know, if you're looking for money, that's pretty obvious, but like I said earlier, you can ask for a referral or whatever you want. In between, tell me why I should care about what you're doing. And I do have another, you know, it's kind of three subsets of this, because how much of this you can get to depends on how much time you have available. In a 1-minute elevator pitch, you can't tell them everything. Okay, fair enough, in a 10-minute pitch, you can't tell them everything either, and I don't want you to. But a 10-minute pitch, in my opinion, is the ideal length of time, and that's why I've got 10 questions that every pitch should answer. And I divide them up into the first few, which are about capturing the imagination of the audience so that they get really excited and engaged. And then the next several questions are about validating what you have been talking about as this great opportunity. And then finally, achieving buy-in if you have that kind of time. If you spend an hour with an investor and you talk for 15 minutes and they talk for 45 minutes, that is a win for you. Okay, if you spend the 55 minutes talking and barely let them get a word in edgewise, you missed a golden opportunity to be able to understand what they care about and to be able to tune your future conversations so that you address their interests rather than your own. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let's move into the 10 questions now. These are my tips and tools, everything. This is my process every single time I coach. I don't care whether I'm coaching for a minute, for a 10-minute pitch, or for a business plan. I always come back to these basics. So these questions, which don't worry about writing them down, we're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so going through each and every one of them. And what they are about are different aspects of the business. One, why should I care? That is your customer, your market pain, and the market size. So these are each asked from the perspective of your audience. So why should I, the investor or the customer or the partner or whatever, why should I care about what you're doing? Number two, what is it you do in language that I can understand? That's all about your secret sauce. Three, why are you better is your competitive advantage. 4 is your intellectual property status and strategy. 5, does it work, is your technology status and or traction, depending on what kind of technology it is and how far along you are. Question 6, how will you make money is your business model. 7, how much will you make? That's out through your liquidity event. That's your financial projections. Question 8, why you is your team. Question 9, what will you do is your development plan. And 10 is how much will that development plan cost to execute. That's your ask. Okay, just taking a quick look for questions. Great. Okay. So question number 1, why should I care? And this photograph is kind of a joke because one thing I can guarantee you is that an investor audience will never be made up of 3 such young people, and certainly not 2 women and 1 guy. Sad but true. Hopefully that'll change over the years. But anyway, what I want you to get from this picture is the attitude. The crossed arms, oh geez, I've heard 29,000 pitches in the last month. You know, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that you've got something really new and different here that's a real value proposition. So that's the mental picture you should have. They are waiting to be impressed. Remember, from an investor's perspective, it's easier to say no. They may not say no to you because nobody wants to damp somebody's enthusiasm, but they would much rather say no to you in terms of actually giving you money, because then they don't have, if they say yes, they don't have that money to invest in the next Google that might be just around the corner. They're putting their reputation on the line with you, and so on. Okay. Why should I care is all about the market, and the fear that we are trying to reduce throughout this pitch is that nobody is going to be interested in buying your products and services. And on the greed side is, holy cow, I get this. I understand the customer and why they would want to buy this product or service over and over and over and over again, leading to lovely amounts of revenue and growth. So when you do talk about this, answering this question early on in your pitch, I want you to be sure to define who your customer is. Actually, define who your product is as well. Believe it or not, I have had a lot of clients who haven't actually gotten around to sort of defining what the product is. The feeling is the technology is so cool that people will figure out what they want to do with it. And to be perfectly honest, the first startup company where I was a research scientist doing thin films of diamond, we had exactly that problem. We thought diamond is the hardest material, it's the most transparent, best room temperature thermal conductivity, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, once we can make it, everybody will want some. That was back in the late 80s, early 90s, so if, as you notice, there are not thin films of diamond available on hardware store shelves, obviously we kind of missed the boat there. Okay, develop your market from the bottom up. So what I mean by that is rather than relying on some expensive market study by Forrester or somebody, even though the analysts there are very smart people doing a great job, their customer is the major corporation that can afford to spend $5 or $10 or $20,000 on these studies in order to see that they've got a billion-dollar market to address. Of course, the investor wants you to have a billion-dollar market opportunity, but they need to know that you understand your niche, where you're starting, how you're going to grow into it, and so on. So the way to develop a market from the bottom up is to know who your customer is, how much they are spending to address the pain they are currently feeling that you're going to fix, and how often they spend that money. Multiply those together and you've got your addressable market. There's lots of things. If we had more time, like in my one-day workshop, I'd show you some do and don't examples of slides, but really the main thing I want you to be very careful about is to go out there and, in the interest of being conservative, say, well, all we need is a 1% penetration of this market and we're all going to be rich. It's just going to be great. A very safe bet. Well, it's not a safe bet from a number of different reasons. First of all, it really isn't easy to get a percent of any market, generally speaking. But more important, if I'm going to invest in a company, I want one that has such a clear advantage over the competition that you are going for it. You think you can take 80–90% of this market. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's probably not going to happen before you get acquired or go public. But it is going to be, it is what you're going to be realistically shooting for. If you're shooting for 1%, I am not going to invest my money in you. I'm going to find somebody who's more confident. Question number 2, what is it you do in a language that I can understand? And this is kind of another joke photograph because obviously you're never going to have this combination of physics, chemistry, organic chemistry, and what else do we have here? Mathematics and goodness knows what else on here. But it's not so much of a joke that I haven't seen slides that are every bit this confusing and dense with information. Remember that your audience not only sees a lot of pitches, they may be seeing a whole lot of them in a row, and they're only going to see each slide of yours for between, let's say, 40 and 80, 90 seconds. That's not enough time to absorb a lot of information. Now, throughout here, while I'm talking about this stuff, I am not suggesting that detail isn't important, that you don't need to understand the underlying technology. You absolutely do. But that level of detail belongs in the backup slides, right? If you're giving a technical presentation, then the technology is key. If you're doing a pitch, then the value proposition is the key, and you just want to go on the surface of the technology. Well, I'll explain that more in a second. So I like to think of the different kinds of presentations, like a technical presentation to engineers is like a screwdriver in your toolbox, and a pitch to investors or customers is like having a wrench. They just serve different purposes. Okay, so what do is your secret sauce, and the fear that you're trying to allay is that you are only interested in playing around in the business and you haven't really thought about the business. And on the greed side of things, that you do, in fact, understand your customer and the market pain that you're addressing. Now, I get a lot of pushback on this with respect to things like, well, I can't talk about my secret sauce. It's proprietary. I can't give it away. Well, no, of course you can't give away your proprietary information, but by the same token, no one who is sane is going to give you a non-disclosure agreement on the first meeting. And you don't want crazy investors. Believe me, I've had those. Instead, what you need to be able to do is to talk about the advantage you have, the innovation that you've developed in a way that is not revealing proprietary information. And the easiest way I know how to do that is to talk about what it is your technology does rather than how it works, okay? And the how it works is where the IP should be buried or involved, and the kind of things that you can leave for your next meeting. And the best thing you can do is, since you've just presented the market pain, the problem that you're solving for the customer in the previous slide in your opening, you can just relate what you are doing to how you're solving that specific problem. It makes for a very nice, smooth flow. don't try to bother insisting on a non-disclosure agreement. And here's the other pushback I usually get, which is, so you want me to dumb down my technology? Do not think about it that way. I think it's, first of all, it's disrespectful to your audience, who is probably not dumb, and even if they are, they have what you want. So if you're thinking about it as dumbing it down, you're even subconsciously thinking about your audience as dumb. It's not going to get you anywhere. Mark Twain once said that, if I'd had more time, I would have written less. It's very difficult to boil down a complex and interwoven kind of a concept on a very high level in a way that is engaging to an audience, clarifying it, which is what we're trying to do throughout answering these 10 questions. So think about it that way instead, okay? All right, next. Why are you better than what's already out there and what's coming down the pike? And this is your competitive advantage. What you're trying to avoid is giving the impression that you're just here's the thought process you want to avoid. Oh, I saw 3 companies doing this very same thing last month. There's no way I'm going to bother with this. Now, you know that it's unique and different and better, or else you wouldn't be giving everything you got, blood, sweat, tears, and next month's mortgage, into making a success out of the company. They don't know that. You've got to find a way to talk about the competitive advantage such that you are clearly different from everybody else. And on the greed side of things is making it easy for them to see that, wow, this really is different. Preferably it's disruptive. Don't say it's disruptive. That's an overused word. Let them come to that conclusion by seeing how you're describing it, saying, holy cow, this really is an amazing revolutionary technology. If you say it, then they're not going to believe it. But if they come to that conclusion themselves, you're in good shape. So what do? Make sure you talk about benefits for you engineers out there. Benefits, not features. The easiest way I know to think about this is that if you walk into a dark room and you flip the light switch, do you care whether the light comes on or what the mechanism is behind the switch plate? So what I want you to be talking about here is, what are the lights you are turning on for your customer? So for instance, if you are selling a new high-efficiency engine and you paint it white because you happen to like white, that's a feature that is of no real relevance to the customer. But if you have an iPhone and you make it white, at least a few years ago, for some reason, that was a benefit that customers were willing to wait 4 hours in line to get. So you have to know the customer and what they consider to be benefits versus features, okay? Turn the lights on for the customer. Make sure that you are talking about the entire competitive landscape, but by the same token, don't get it too cluttered up with lots of information. Remember, 40 to 80 seconds, 90 seconds on each slide. They don't have time to absorb a complicated message on each slide. Most important things for you to do are to not claim you have no competition. Primary reason, well, there's only 3 answers to that. If you say, they say, so who's your competition? You say, oh, we don't have any. Either you're right, and in a capitalist society, that means that, hey, there's no market for this, right? Otherwise, somebody would be selling a solution and people would be buying it. Second is, you could be wrong and you just haven't bothered to do your homework. God knows I don't want to trust my investment money with somebody who hasn't done their homework. Number 3, you're wrong and you're just too arrogant to understand that you're not the smartest person on the planet. So never say that. Even if you feel like what you've got is new to the world, people are doing something today, even if it's just complaining about the situation, they're doing something today to deal with whatever that problem is. Make sure, in fact, that that business as usual concept is covered in there. And this is, the very, very standard, right? Everybody has used and seen this kind of a matrix. Even if you don't want to show it this way, I encourage you to go through the discipline of actually framing it this way, because it will really help you create your competition slides. And also, just the caveat that, every time I have tried leaving this chart out of a presentation because I feel like everybody has seen it and they just kind of laugh at it, they've missed what the competition is. They say, oh, you didn't cover competition. And it's like, yes, we did. You just didn't notice it because we didn't put it in a very obvious matrix like this. So you abandon the matrix or the four-square kind of a presentation at your own risk. Several things I'd like you to keep in mind here. Tips that will make your matrix more useful. First of all, you'll notice that I've got benefits across the top and competition down the side. That's because psychologically, I want you at the top of the list. You're number one. All the competition comes after you. Second, at least in the Western world, our eye moves more easily from left to right, so telling the story about how great your company is easier for the audience to follow if you're going across the field this way. I want you to put each column heading, and there should be no more than 4 or 5 column headings, and I want them each framed or phrased as a benefit in a way that you can either check or X or NA or something like that in each cell below. So really think about it. Very simple titles. I don't need something that's 20 words long. 3 to maybe 5 words is as much as you can really fit in and expect people to be able to read and understand. But then go through here and be able to X or check for each one. For the competitors, make sure that you're covering business as usual, and that's whatever people are doing right now, up to and including complaining about it. I mean, I guess I wouldn't write in complaining about it, but who are they buying solutions from now, or what are they doing right now? The second and third kinds of competitors, direct and indirect competition that exists already, and then fourth would be the emerging competition, other startups or new products coming from established companies that will make a difference. Also, be careful when if you do show a matrix, make sure that you're telling a story, not saying, okay, we're better at benefit 1 against competitor 1 because of this, against competitor 2 because of that, against competitor 3 because of this other thing, and by the time you've gotten to this point, people are reading their emails and not paying any attention to you. Instead, the way you could handle a matrix like this would be to say something like, so for these 4 benefits that we know our customers really care about, we're dominating in this industry. We do have some competition in benefits 2 and 3 from some of our competitors, like business as usual. They're pretty strong in terms of benefit 3, but they're so weak in benefits, right, benefits 1 and 4 are strong in benefit number 3, but they're weak across the board in the others. So we think we will be able to dominate against them. We will dominate against them. Don't use mealy-mouthed words like think, believe, hope. Those are not the kinds of words I want to hear if I'm going to trust you with my millions of dollars, okay? Pitch the story you believe in and then pitch the hell out of it. You are going to be wrong. Your numbers will be off. Your plans will be off. That's not the point to a pitch. I know it's really frustrating to pitch something where you don't know enough, but the idea here is you are trying to show them that you think like a business person, you understand your industry, not that you are you can see the future. Nobody can. So don't worry about it, but think like a business person and how the world exists around you. Okay, question number 4, how will you stay better? This is your IP status and strategy, and what you're trying to allay in terms of fear is that your competition will see what you're doing, duplicate it, and put it out to market faster and at half the price because they haven't had to make all the same mistakes that you have. And on the greed side, that your barriers are well thought out and effective so that competition will really struggle to come out on top. What I want you to make sure that you do, if you are using patents, which a lot of people don't these days, but if you want to license your technology or be acquired, chances are reasonable, not in all cases, but in many cases, you will want to have a patent. Let's say you're in pharma or medical devices or you're doing hardware of some kind. If you're using patents, know what your claims are, okay? And make sure that your company owns rights to those patents, okay? Because otherwise you'll never get an investment. Just saying, oh, we've got these great patents, they've been, it's a provisional or it's a PCT or it's a whatever, if they ask you a question about, so how is this patent going to act as a barrier to entry, you need to be able to address that question. Don't wind up saying, well, you know, I'll have to get back to you on that. That's a scary thing for your audience. Next is make sure that if you have other barriers to entry, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, maybe you've got a great contract with a utility or the government that's, you know, sewed up for 5 years, or you've got a partner, so you're like Intel Inside, or you know, there are other kinds of advantages. Just make sure that you can defend it. Don't throw around buzzwords and hope that they don't figure out what the issue is, because they will figure out that you don't know, and that will make them very nervous. On the don't side, as I was suggesting in the previous for the previous question, this is not a time to say, well, we're really smart, we've got a great laboratory and great equipment, so we're obviously going to be able to stay ahead. This never works. There are people with more resources, and chances are ideas tend to get nucleated in lots of different places at the same time. So you are up against competition even if you don't know about it yet. And as I mentioned earlier, make absolutely sure that nobody else has rights to the technology, because then you're not going to be able to bar them from entering. Now, you know, you have to be, I should be a little bit careful about that, right? In that if you're just copywriting or something like that, you're not having patents, then maybe others have rights to the technology. This is really only applies when you've got patents. But let's say that you are negotiating a license from a university for a specific patent. You must complete that process before you go out and ask for money, because investors will need you to need the company to own the technology before they will ever invest. And that includes, if you happen to be the inventor, you must sign the technology over to the company. They don't want you to, you know, take your ball and go home if you get mad one day. And even if a company winds up going out of business, they still want ownership of the IP, because it may be the only thing with any value, and they'll want to sell that. Very useful piece of information from a friend of mine, Sharon Ballard. All attorneys cost the same in the end, and that is you either pay up front for the services of a really good one, or you pay in the long run to fix the mistakes of one that is, let's just say, mediocre. All right, so if you don't happen to have good legal advice right now, or you haven't found an attorney that you feel really comfortable with, you know, ask your mentors, drop me a line, anybody on the MentorSmart team. We all know attorneys who will at least sit down with you for an hour for free, talk about what is important for you to know, and at least give you the ideas of what you should be thinking about before hiring an attorney, and the kinds of issues your company should be worried about. Okay, question number 5, does it work? This is really key. If you are doing a web app or other software, at this point you often have to actually have traction already, maybe even people spending money on it. If you're doing hardware of some kind, maybe you're doing wind turbines or solar cells or medical devices or whatever, maybe you don't have traction yet because you have a very long pathway to go to get approval and pass regulatory tests and so on. So maybe you've just got a proof of concept, a prototype, beta test, whatever. The issue is that when you most need the money tends to be at the beginning, when you've got kind of an idea and maybe something with baling twine and chewing gum holding it together. That's when you need the money, but it's very, very risky at that point. Scaling it up and making it happen for customers takes just as much effort as getting that first idea and testing that idea out in the first place. So if you can show that you are already earning revenue, that's going to maximize greed. If you can't show that, then because after all, you're looking for money for a reason, you should be able to explain why it is you believe that this is going to be a successful company based on this technology. So what are the steps you need to go through? Why, what is it about this innovation that makes you confident that it will work in the real world? So the best thing you can do for this is, besides having revenue, is to show validated data. That data that's been validated by a third party, best of all, is a customer, potential customer who has come in sort of as a partner and is actually taking a look at your products and services and saying, yeah, this really works. If not, then you show your own data, and if you don't have that, well, never lie, never mislead. That just, once you destroy your credibility, you'll never get investment. But what you can do is say, look, here's where we are, and here's why we're confident that we can get to a product or service for which we can get revenue. On the don't side of things, never lie, never mislead, like I said, and make sure that you're not going with the assumption that your innovation is actually, now that that's done, everything else is going to be easy. If you've ever done this before, you're probably going, why would I say that? But if you're an innovator who has been in school or in academia for the most part, it may not feel that way. The innovation is really hard to do, right? You know, even doing a lab bench kind of proof of concept can be very challenging. But nonetheless, scaling it up, more companies fail at that scale up and getting product out to market than those that then fail from a lack of the technology by a long shot. So make sure that you are understanding and appreciating that just because you've got a great idea, that doesn't mean you're a great investment. Question number 6. Excuse me. How will you make money? So this is your business model, and the fear here is that you are not really a business person. You're an entrepreneur who has cool technology that you want to fool around with, and you know, when you get some new results, you're going to want to go and chase after those. On the greed side, you know how your industry works and how your company should fit into that industry, match up against competition, deliver to customers, you understand the suppliers and so on and so forth. So this means you got to know what your product is, and on the value chain, you should know if you do have any high-risk suppliers, like if you're doing some kind of a semiconductor that requires some rare metals, rare earth metals to really to succeed, and you know, it all comes out of a single mine in China someplace. That's pretty risky, right? So what are your contingency plans if that doesn't work out? If you're writing software, okay, chances are electrons, internet, those will all be available, at least in the developed world, at your convenience. Let's hear it for net neutrality, right? You need to know who your end user is, who the decision maker is. My feeling is your customer is always the one who signs the check. So they may have completely different motivations for why they want your technology. So the scenario I always use, just kind of again as a joke, is let's say Michael J. Fox comes back from the future with his hovercraft skateboard and says, here, take this technology and go ahead and build a company around it. Your end user is, you know, 13-year-old boys who want to scare the snot out of their parents and have lots of fun doing dangerous tricks on a hoverboard skateboard. But you know, you're not going to charge $50 for this, you're going to charge $500 for this. This is special technology. So the 13-year-old boys are not going to buy this, their parents are. And if you say your main pitch to them is that, well, we're going to sell you an expensive toy so that your child can scare the snot out of you, chances are they're not going to come up with the money. Instead, the thinking process might be, well, because your kid rides around on this hovercraft, they're going to understand the technology just on an intuitive level and wind up getting into Harvard as a result. So what are the motivations? How do you reach them? You know, for that parent, are you going through the PTA or the school board or something? Or if you're going to the kids, is it social media? Or are you going to skateboarding clubs? How are you going to reach these people? And are you manufacturing internally or outsourcing it? You know, all of these questions, you need to know how things function in your industry. And probably the most straightforward way to get a handle on this is to look at what your competitors do and and copy what they do well and innovate where they have hurt themselves. Make sure you don't leave out the business model altogether. Don't throw out a business model you haven't really thought through. A couple of questions and they will see right through it. How your business works, you know, 5 years from now when you're making these millions and millions of dollars, hopefully tens of millions of dollars, that is what the investors are buying, right? Because that's the organization that's going to get acquired or go public and make their return on investment. So make sure that you address it, and it's not how you're keeping body and soul together right now that I want you to talk about in terms of business model. Like if you're you know, if you've got some kind of a web app that lets you build websites, and for the time being you're making websites for people just so you can get enough revenue to keep eating, but in the long run it's really going to be a subscription-based platform that you provide what do you call it, tech support for, and really nothing else. That's the model. The latter is the model I want you to talk about at this point. Question 7, how much will you make? That's your financial projections right out through your exit, which is generally speaking either an acquisition or an IPO. We'll talk more about that in a minute. What we're trying to get at here is that, holy crap, I really see an opportunity to make my numbers, my 10x return on investment in 3 to 5 years, or whatever their metric happens to be. Your numbers, whatever you're pitching, has to plausibly support their need to get the return on investment according to their fund strategy. Which reminds me, if you go and pitch to an investor and you haven't gone on their website and really looked at their investment philosophy, kinds of companies they've invested in already, you know, followed their blog, their Twitter feed, whatever, you're really making an enormous mistake. So make sure you understand what they are interested in investing in. Anyway, what we want to do is to demonstrate that we've got an amazing opportunity here to have a high growth company. If that's what you want. If you want a lifestyle company, that's completely fair and reasonable. You're just not going to get the same kind of investor for it. But let's say you're going for venture capital or angel investors who want a big return. So the fear you're trying to allay is that it's never going to make money, and the greed is, wow, I can make my numbers. Okay, now when you show this again, you're going to have to do have more detailed information on your backup slides. Don't do like I did when I was running the software company and create an incredibly beautiful, sophisticated model of your finances, because chances are you're going to be 100% wrong. Okay, your product's going to be different, the pricing strategy will be different, and so on. Remember, what you're trying to do here is use the best information you have right now to get an idea of what the numbers are going to be. You want to, in this case, again, you're looking at bottoms up. So remember, from the market size, when we first at the beginning, we're talking about the number of people with the problem that you are addressing and how much they are paying in order to address it. Well, we have to flip that a little bit. How much will they need to pay to you on how frequent a basis in order to get your product, and how fast will you penetrate that market? So you multiply those numbers together, number of customers, amount they'd pay, and penetration into the market, and that will give you your financial projections. I would recommend sticking with revenue, EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. There is some argument for putting interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization into the numbers, but for the most part, there's so much accounting stuff that can go on in addressing those that most investors prefer to see the EBITDA numbers so they can compare apples to apples with other opportunities. Show when you're going to hit break even. You know, address your gross margin, make sure that it's in line with what's there for the rest of the industry. But mostly just keep it really super simple. I prefer a bar graph to a spreadsheet. And if you put a spreadsheet up there, make sure that you do it in a way that you can have at least an 18-point font. If you do a 10 or 12-point font on your slides, I will find you and slap you. Don't do that. It's just irritating. No one can read that, and no one can absorb that kind of information. And if they're squinting at the slide, they're not listening to you. They should be listening. And on the don't side as well, well, we're talking about don't provide super detailed financials. And this last piece of advice is like, yeah, right, over or underestimate your growth. How the heck am I going to do that? Well, since you're going to be wrong anyway, there really is no way to do that. But here's what I suggest you try to do as a sensible approach to this important question, and that is to do a conservative, a reasonable, and an optimistic version of your financials out through whatever your liquidity event is going to be, as far as you're concerned with the data you have today. And then pitch the optimistic version. Now, don't pitch the realistic one, pitch the optimistic one, because first of all, they're going to assume you're pitching the optimistic numbers. Second, you want to be bullish on your company. And third, they need to see there is the potential for a hockey stick at least, so that they have that opportunity to get their return on investment, to make their numbers. Then when they ask you difficult questions about, well, what if this goes wrong, what if that goes wrong, well, then you can break out the realistic and then finally the pessimistic financials from your backup slides. Okay, question number 8, and that is, why are you the right team for this particular enterprise? And here what we're trying to avoid is the fear that you don't know what you're doing and that you're going to be learning on my dime. So if you don't have the experience, as I said previously, never lie, never mislead, but you don't want to come across as list your experience such as you have, list degrees if that's all you have, but don't be arrogant about it. Even if you've done this 12 times before, don't worry, your record will speak for itself. This is not the place to be arrogant. Who wants to marry an arrogant person, right? And that's basically what an investment is. You are going to be joined at the hip for, one hopes, years and years to come. So be sure that you're the kind of person somebody wants to marry. On the greed side of things, the more successful the team, the better. That's a huge confidence builder for the investor, and that's why people are always saying that team is so important, because execution is what determines success for the most part. So experience is much more important than education. That's why I always start off my presentations with, look, I've coached nearly 600 mostly high-tech entrepreneurs, and they've gone on to raise well over $250 million. Rather than talking about my BS from MIT, PhD from Stanford, because even though, that is a nice pedigree for me, it's a nice union card, if you will, if I can give you those kinds of success rates, and that level of experience of coaching hundreds and hundreds of people to raise hundreds of billions of dollars, then you don't really care whether I dropped out of high school, do you? As long as I can deliver. If you are struggling a little bit on having enough experience on your team, don't worry about it. Management goes in here, but also any advisors you have, partners that are also interested in developing the technology, and so on. This is not really the place to include everybody. I know that your developers, your researchers, production, all of these other people, sales and marketing, they're all critical to the success of your company. But right now, when we're pitching on this in this initial pitch, the idea is, who are the people that are making the decisions for the company? And that's not going to be the lower level people. It's going to be the people who are on the management team. Okay, so and don't have co-CEOs and things like that, because it's all, you may get along super great right now, but the real challenge comes when things start to go wrong or you have a difference of opinion. And having a joint or a group decision-making process is slow, and it's just the fact of the matter is you're going to have to make difficult decisions with insufficient data. And that means the buck has to stop with someone. So that's why I don't want you to list lots of people. It's about the management team here. The other thing is that if you've got partners, or if you want to talk about them as partners, make sure you have a legal relationship with them. One of the worst things you can do for your credibility is to throw up a slide with lots and lots of logos on it of impressive companies, and then somebody says, so you are actually working with these people? For you to say, oh no, we're going to approach them next week, or we've just started having some talks with them, that is going to just deep six your credibility big time. Use the logos when you've got a legal relationship. Otherwise, use names maybe. Just don't make it look as though you're trying to pad your resume, basically. All right? Okay, questions 9 and 10. The other way I think about these is how much time and how much money is it going to take to get to what value-added milestones on the way to my return on investment? Or what are you going to do if I give you money? What's your development plan, and how much is it going to cost me to get to my return on investment? So that's your development plan and your ask. And what we really are trying to do here is to show that you are focused like a laser on getting to your initial revenue and to your exit, and that you've got an aggressive plan for getting there, an aggressive but realistic plan for getting there. Once again, I want you to keep it simple, simple, simple. And when you're talking about your plan, make sure that you're focused on adding value. So maybe some of what you want to spend the money that you get on from your investors, maybe what you want to spend it on is hiring a senior VP of sales and marketing because he's really expensive, but he's got this amazing Rolodex. Or you need to buy an expensive piece of equipment or something like that. These are expenses that increase the risk associated with your company. It's fine to talk about those. In fact, I encourage you to go ahead and do so. But what you want, the more positive way to think about it is, what is the value-added milestone you're going to accomplish with these expenditures? So the VP of Sales and Marketing, maybe he's going to be responsible for getting you 10 big-time customer contracts by the end of the year. Maybe the expensive piece of equipment will allow you to double production or something like that. So know what you're going to spend the money on, but more important, know how you are going to reduce risk and increase value associated with your company. Make sure you include the liquidity event. And by that, I don't mean say, well, we're either going to go public or get acquired. Well, sort of, duh. What really are the other options here? I mean, there's some esoteric things you can do, but for the most part, it's going to be one of those two. So look around at your competition, look at similar companies, maybe in related industries. How do they exit these days? What kind of valuations do they have? You know, you should have a valuation in mind for your company at this stage of the game. Don't volunteer it. That's like getting into a negotiation with somebody and just throwing out your first bid before you even know that they're interested. But that doesn't mean you can't say, well, and you know, Google has a tendency to acquire this kind of technology. They pay about, you know, of course, a lot of their acquisitions don't have any revenue, but let's just say for yucks that they pay 10 times revenue or something like that typically, or they've acquired 3 web app companies in the last 2 years for about $350 million each. You know, something like that that shows comparable types of companies, okay? And make sure that when you're pitching that the pitch is within the investor's comfort zone. This is another reason to make absolutely sure you go to the website first of the investor, of the investment firm, so you know if you're asking for $50,000, they don't only do $50 million and higher for state, you know, C rounds and above. People make this kind of mistake all the time, and it's just baffling to me. Make sure that you are the kind of company that they would be willing to invest in, that they haven't already invested in a potential competitor, so that they are a good match for you. This is my favorite way to show your development plan and ask. So you see we've got a time, this is sort of a modified Gantt chart, with the one difference being that we're going up from left to right as opposed to most Gantt charts go down. That's because investors like things that go up from left to right, and we want to be nice and cheery and positive. The bullets are value-added milestones that I want that you will plan to accomplish, that you will deliver, not plan to accomplish, but you will deliver. So if somebody invests $4 million in this particular fictional company here, by the end of 2015, we will have completed our demo and filed 2 additional patents. If you wanted to talk about what the expenses are associated with that, then you could say, well, now $4 million will go to hiring 2 new engineers, a test station for this particular demo, and also to paying the attorney's fees for filing these patents on a worldwide basis. Okay, so that's where the ask comes in. So there's a plan to get from where you are today. The diamond is your liquidity event, and in between here are the major steps we have to go through. And once again, this is about telling a story. So for this one, you might say something like, well, we expect to raise a total of $24 million over the next 5 years in order to exit via acquisition by General Electric or a similar company that has a history of investing in this kind of company. That money will be used initially a $4 million round is needed in order to complete our demo and file patents. The next round of $5 million will be used to achieve regulatory compliance and the first major new customer, maybe a U.S. military for a jet or something like that. And finally, we anticipate needing an additional $15 million for our expansion to reach break-even and sign any new customers. Okay, so that is the 10 questions. And just to remind you, these are the 3 things I want you to do every time you pitch from now on. Start the relationship by introducing yourself. A pitch is more a conversation than a presentation. So answer question 0. Who is your audience before you ever get there? You keep it in mind the entire time that you are pitching. And at the end, complete the pitch by making an ask, which is essentially question 10. In between, if you've got enough time for it, answer all 10 of the questions. If you only have 3 minutes, then pick the 3 to 5 maybe most robust answers you have, the 3 to 5 questions for which you have the most robust answers, and make sure you hit on those. If you've got 10 minutes though, I promise you, you can answer all 10 questions in a 10-minute pitch, no matter what the technology is. I've done this about a bazillion times now, and I can assure you that it's true. Okay, so that is about that for a whirlwind tour of the 10 questions. If anybody has, I don't have any questions in the Q&A box. Would anybody like to pitch? Just give me a 1-minute elevator pitch. I'll be happy to give some, to provide you with some feedback right away. Okay, I will take that as not needing any coaching right now today. There will be other opportunities throughout the course of MentorSmart. I'll also, I'm trying to decide whether to put up a Google Plus page or my website or something like that, a forum where you can ask questions and so on, or maybe on LinkedIn. I'm not sure which. But we'll try to have a place for you to get answers to questions and maybe get some additional help as I've been discussing. So with that, I will say that is Perfect Pitch in about an hour. Thank you so very much for attending. I really appreciate it. And email me questions at linda@planoandsimple.com. The website is about to be updated, so don't be too harsh on me. But I hope to have the Pitch-O-Matic up there in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to just keep babbling on until, nobody is interested at this point, so we'll just leave it at that. And again, I'll say thank you ever so much. Stay warm and dry on this rainy Monday, and I will talk to you later. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.